what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Speak from the Heart, a testimonial podcast series where athletes share their faith behind their story and their athletic career. And today I'm joined by Cleveland Browns wide receiver, former Western Kentucky standout, and one of the most dynamic playmakers in the NFL, Malachi Corley. So, Malachi, welcome to the show, man. I'm really excited to have you on here.
From the 26, they get it into the hands of Malachi Corley.
Is high as a pro. Inside handoff to Corley and Malachi Corley all the way inside the 20.
And I'm happy to be here. It's an honor for me to be here. I can't wait to see what we're finna get into and see how it goes.
That's awesome, man. So you were born in Orange City, Florida, later moved to Kentucky and attended Campbellsville High School, where you played both football and basketball. So what was your upbringing like, and how did moving states and environments shape you as a person and as an athlete?
So just, starting out and so really people kind of get it just a tad bit misconstrued, like, because my story is like a kind of like a thing that's not overly known about. There's kind of just a little tidbits, like even the thing about me like playing cornerback, because that was a real thing too. But just kind of like the narratives kind of push a little bit more for things like that than it really was.
Yeah.
I was born in Fort Knox. So I'm a military baby. My dad is he's 20 years retired colonel in the military. But I grew up with my mom though. But I started off in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and moved down to Orange City, Florida, which is where all my family is. Literally all my heritage, all my history is all from Florida. So moving down there immediately, just in growing up, my mom, single mom of four, that story, just a lot of instability on her part, and I tell people like we struggled a lot growing up. Me being the youngest of four, I really didn't. I tell people I didn't experience the struggle as much because when you're a little kid, you don't really know that you're struggling. You're kind of just having fun and making your own fun out of any circumstance that you're in. But yeah, just a lot of instability growing up. Home to home, a little bit of homelessness in the mix of that. Staying with people, staying with friends of the family, staying with friends that I came into contact with, got really close with during elementary school and stuff like that. So just a little bit of instability going up through there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's tough. A lot of stress on mom, but I mean, look at you now, man. Like, I'm sure you really look back and appreciate all that she's done for you.
And like, yeah, like
you've been through. Yeah.
You see like the things that your parents are exemplifying things for you that you don't even realize until you're older. Most things
100%.
don't, the saying, like most things don't make sense unless they're going in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see that, your mom's resiliency, her ability to persevere and stay consistent, mother of four coming home from, multiple shifts. She don't want to come home and cook for her family, but never one time did I ever hear her complain.
Yeah.
Never did I hear her mope, and that just kind of permeated through me, just seeing that over and over. You realize, my mom never complains about this. My mom works really hard. I also should feel the same. I feel that same drive to do the same thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree. And like you said about, you don't really understand until you're older. I didn't understand all the things my parents did for me and how blessed I was to grow up with two parents that cared about what I was doing and all that stuff. But I mean, shout out to your mom, man. Like,
shout out to your mom, bro.
Yeah, for sure. So why did you choose football? When did you realize that this sport could be more than just a game for you?
Just like growing up, you just like sometimes you just feel, you feel these tugs and pulls towards certain things. Like there's certain kids that grow up and have a real knack for, arts and photography or just drawing or comics or whatever it may be. But for me, just like running around and playing football, I just found a lot of enjoyment in it, and it's kind of odd. It's like nowadays I really like just running for the thought of just running sounds awful to me. But like, but growing up, like just running around, playing around my friends, playing around with my brothers, having a whole bunch of other older kids around me, always just trying to be competitive and competing with them. And then, you get older, you get into middle school and you're like, dang, I'm not as bigger or faster than everybody else out here, but like, I feel like I'm better than everyone. But, and then just through high school, when in high school, I was like 5'6.5", 5'7" when I was a sophomore. So like, I was still kind of small. I started that whole season I went through just straight knee pains because I was just growing and getting taller, which I'm still not that tall. I'm only like 5'11". But Yeah, but like in that void going into junior year, you start lifting weights, start growing into your body, and
Hmm.
yeah, and I started feeling at that point. I'm like, yeah, maybe I could, do something with this. And
Yeah.
but ultimately, I just love playing. I just love it each and every day, just showing up. And I never wanted to suck. I really never wanted to be bad. So like, I always
Mm.
just would put in the extra work and the extra hours in order to try to be as good as I could be. But
Yeah.
I always loved football though. It always held a special place in my heart.
Yeah. And so coming out of high school, it showed that you were a two-star recruit. You
Yeah.
didn't have, national attention that maybe
Uh,
other people had. So what did the recruiting process look like for you? And how did you stay confident when the spotlight wasn't, directly on you, or maybe some people maybe doubted you or didn't think that you had much in store for you?
yeah, like when you have a mom that's always telling you that you can be special and that God's
Yeah.
put them on your heart. She's
Hmm.
like she always would say like, "Kai, I know like like that you're the youngest of all the kids. Like you've had so many examples in front of you. Like you're gonna be the one out of all of us to do whatever it is." And just in high school, I didn't have I got my first offer at the tail end of my junior year. I ended up with 9 FCS offers by the end of my senior year. Um, and my decision to go to Western Kentucky was a simple decision. Really, it just came down to home and family life. It was close to home. It felt like being in Campbellsville. I grew up in a small town in Campbellsville, Kentucky. So just not a lot of opportunities. Not like Campbellsville is a melting pot for college recruiters to come through. Like I was the first kid to sign a Division I letter of intent to come from my high school. So like it just wasn't a plethora of opportunities. But when I got that one opportunity from Western Kentucky to have opportunity to play at FBS football, you just needed to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of getting in the NFL. It doesn't matter if you're drafted in the first round or you've seen guys drafted in the first round, they're out of the league in 3 years. You've seen
Yeah.
guys that are undrafted that stay in the league for 13 plus years. So, it kind of like that thing is like, it doesn't matter. The ultimate goal is the result in the end. The journey to how you get there is just however you get there.
100%. And I think a big part of it is in Samuel 1 verse 16 it talks about how God looks at our hearts and not our resumes. And
No
so what we
question.
really bring to the table, not in terms of our accolades or our trophies or anything like that. It's all about who we are as people and as Christians, and God had a plan for you.
No
Um
question. And
yeah.
I think about James chapter 1. He's like, "Count it all joy, my brothers, for the testing of your faith." That's going to create character, and that's going to produce endurance, and that's going to create steadfastness for you.
Yeah.
And I try to lean into that and understand that, like, wherever I was and I thank God all the time because I just feel like I had just a touch of wisdom in the sermon when I was a little bit younger, like understanding like, hey, I might not be in the most prolific position. I trained with a lot of the best kids in the state. Kids that were 3 stars and 4 stars had offers from all the big schools,
Yeah.
and I never felt discouraged by these kids 'cause I worked right alongside them. And I realized that when the dust settles, when the clouds roll over, I'll still be here standing because of I got my Lord and Savior here with me, and He's keeping me steadfast in the journey.
Yeah. Exactly right. And
No
like you
doubt.
said, you were recruited to Western Kentucky. And I think you
Absolutely.
mentioned this a little bit earlier about you were recruited as a cornerback
Yeah.
and then you switched to wide receiver during the preseason. So how
No
difficult was that transition? How did you trust God when your role and future suddenly kind of changed?
Yeah. And like sometimes, like, first of all, like I always say it all the time, like God is closer than you, like tighter than your own skin, like closer than the blood vessels and cells inside your body. He's closer than all of that, because I feel like He's the one that enacted all those things in you to begin with.
Yeah.
But I feel like when I first got to Western, I wasn't as I was more so focused on the product and the result as opposed to the process. You
Yeah.
felt like things were supposed to just be handed to you as soon as you got there because of your college career or whatever. And I've never been like a diva type of person. I've always kind of been like a great, like, put your head down and work type of dude. But when I first got to Western, and literally from the first day I got there, they changed my position. Actually, it wasn't cornerback, so I did get recruited to play receiver and cornerback there. But when I got there, and I went on my junior day visit, like when I was probably like 170 pounds when I went there as a junior. When I went back as a senior, I was like 197 pounds. So like it was a different kind of like person walking there a little bit.
Yeah.
So when I got there, they moved me to Coach Brian Ellis. He's the one that recruited me there. When I got there, he moved me immediately to running back. And I always had the ball in my hand, so it was nothing like I didn't feel any type of way. I felt indifferent about playing running back or receiver. I just wanted to have the opportunity to have the ball in my hands.
Yeah.
Um, so just. Ultimately, you can ask my mom, you can ask my brother, my trainer. I even went into my OC's office like week 4 of the season. I'm like, what is a freshman doing walking into his offensive coordinator's office week 4 asking to play?
Yeah.
But like for me, I just felt that way. I'm like, I'm seeing the people that are playing, and I feel like I can play just as well as them, if not better.
Hmm.
And I just thank God all the time just for the abilities and the confidence that He's given me. Just to continue to press on and train ahead.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to lean in that. And we'll dive even more into the story, but yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's cool. I think a lot of a similarity between really high talent athletes and elite dudes that continue to make it the next level, they always expect like they have unwavering confidence in themselves
yeah, I
about
agree
who
with
they are as people. Like that's something I wish I would have had when I first got to college. I
that.
kind of I wanted to see the people in front of me and oh dang, I'm not as good as him. Or like
Yeah,
he's older than me, whatever. And I kind of played a little bit of the victim,
yeah,
instead of I still worked hard, but
yeah,
I didn't really believe in myself enough to stack up against that guy and maybe be like, yeah, I think I could handle him, or I think I could, play that spot
absolutely.
in his place. But obviously, like just having that unwavering confidence in yourself and understanding that God's ways are higher than our ways, even
Nope,
whenever
yeah,
things don't, stack up the way that we imagine them to. I mean, I went
absolutely.
to EKU, Eastern Kentucky,
Yeah,
to play and be a shortstop.
yeah,
And then, shortstop, second base started to happen. And then shortstop, second base, third base started to happen.
yeah.
And then I was playing a little bit of outfield in some of our
Hmm.
scrimmages. So, like it
Yeah,
changes a little bit. And so just roll with the punches and understand that, trusting God's plan for us, that's huge. But that's a cool story.
you got to
I like
lean
how you
into
mentioned
that.
that. Yeah,
You
exactly.
got to lean into that, like wherever. And I say, like, in the Philippians, he says, "I know how to face plenty and hunger. I know how to be abound and be brought low. And I know how to find contentment in all those. Whatever it be, wherever your feet are, you know that God's right there with you, and
Yeah,
you can push through it.
exactly
And
right.
let me speak to that one thing about unwavering confidence real quick. Just um, people don't, and I understand like it's a lot of things that there's like a conglomerate of things that have to come together for someone to have a lot of confidence in a situation.
Yeah,
Like, whether it just be your straight ability, sometimes people just have that willpower and that mindset that just, even if they're really not that great at something, like they just feel that they are, so, like a lot of us delude ourselves into feeling about things, which is important. It's important to feel delusionally good about things,
yeah,
and not so much, like bold and ignorant, but like just that I know that I'm capable of the things that I'm setting forward to do.
yeah,
And especially like for young kids, I tell them all the time, like, never feel like, oh, this kid's a 4 star or 5 star and he's so much better than me or he's levels above me, or even forget the 4 and 5 stars. I went to college, this guy's a senior, I'm a freshman, or I'm in high school, this guy's older than me, he's got more years than me. That
yeah,
none of that really matters though. It does matter, but you take those things with a grain of salt. Like every situation, every individual is so different. And what gets a person going and I think about Malachi Tony that's playing at Miami right now. It's a 17-year-old kid who
yeah,
there's people that are in college that are 26-year-olds still playing college, even older than that, 28-year-olds playing in college, and you could see how much fun and enjoyment and personality he plays the game with just because of
yeah,
his confidence in himself.
yeah.
But
And
we're going, yeah,
And I honestly think that that mindset for you propelled your, career at Western. Like you
no
had over
doubt.
3,000 career yards. You had multiple CUSA honors and you were nationally recognized. So how did you deal with that? How did you guard your heart and your identity when it came to success and praise, coming from other people, maybe even your teammates and coaches and just everybody that was watching you?
Yeah. And I say it all the time. I thank God that I got a praying mama, a mom that prays for me, a mom that keeps me humble, a mom who she never made me feel like she always gave me compliments and always let me know that I was doing well, but never made me feel like I was over anyone, was
Yeah,
over anyone. I feel like she always left that you still got work to do, but not like in a way that's demeaning. Um, but just I just grew up in humble beginnings and have humble roots, and I got a humble mom, and
yeah,
and just having that example in front of me, and I told her many times I've had whole write ups, I've had made whole I've had old journal entries about my mom, just about how God has put a great steward in front of me, that
yeah,
is a woman of faith who literally grew up in the church. Like I said, raised 4 kids and stayed faithful. I never seen my mom do a drug, never seen men coming through and in and out the house, like
yeah,
anything like that. She always stayed firm for us. Um, so just when, everything's coming towards me, accolades and, opportunities and all the things that come with success, like I kind of just seen it as, it's not a means to an end, but like, of course, I didn't went out and had a drink, I didn't tested the fires and all that type of stuff. I didn't have
Yeah.
my fun, but like ultimately you realize that it can be a means to an end at a time. And I went through my own struggles in like 2021, like the end of 2021, going into that 2022 spring. Literally, I say the spring that summer and everything that year that I became a guy in
Hmm.
2022. That was like that spring, was kind of like my best spring as far as performance go. Like running, strength, all that type of stuff. But like, I started off that spring like, real mental troubles, like
Yeah.
really went to go see this therapist at Western Kentucky at the time. His name was Dr. Joey Case. And I woke up one day and I just realized like, something's not right with me. And like something feels off about me. Um, and then I went to, have that conversation and through some therapy sessions, which really ultimately, and I thank God for it because it all just led me back to God. Just foundationally, I feel like I hadn't been abiding him in the way that I should have been. And,
Yeah.
when sometimes, and I say it all the time, like, your adversary, the devil, is, a prowling lion. He roars around looking to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yes.
So, um, and just me not abiding him is what I felt that separation from. And I feel like, God does things, he tugs and pulls on you to realign you or repurpose you. And
Yeah.
I feel like I was far away from him in that time, in that come through Joey Case. And I consider people stewards all the time, like
Hmm.
through, and you might know it within yourself, but just somebody to have that conversation with to open it up for you. And with Joey, and that opportunity with Joey Case really pulled me back into, and I had literally the best ending of the spring and you know best season of my career. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And the people around you are so important. They're, directly in your environment and they kind of mold you into a person as well as your faith and who you end up becoming. And
absolutely.
that community is brutal. It's what you need, and it can
Hmm.
be either negative or positive. I talked about this in one of my videos. If you hang around bums, you'll be a bum, but if you hang around winners, you'll be a winner. And
No
it's
question.
there's some truth
Undeniably.
there's some truth to that for sure. Um,
Undeniably.
but yeah, talk about being drafted in the third round of the 2024 NFL draft. It's something most athletes dream of. What was
Yeah.
that moment like for you emotionally, and where was God in that process for you?
Um, when I tell you that God literally, he like kind of came into my life and like flipped and turned it upside down. I went from everything at West Kentucky, and it kind of went like, soon as the season's over, it kind of just went like clean slate. Like, here we are. This is what's in front of us. We got the opportunity for the draft, and the biggest moment of your life, the thing that everyone dreams of, going to the combine, having a pro days, seeing all these NFL scouts, and having a chance to have your name called.
Yeah.
And I thank God for the focus, um, and the ambition and the drive that he gave me throughout that whole season from January start of draft prep into the you know to the ends of being drafted. And like I say, he was just covering me in his blood and the entire time, like just from eating habits and changing my diet around and being able to do some of the workouts that we're doing, some of the fasting that we're doing, and everything, just trying to get my body right. Because at Western Kentucky, I just wasn't eating that great. Like
Yeah.
I was just kind of picking out a little bit. So
Yeah.
um, when it was really time to lock in, just having my brother around me, who's literally now my manager,
Mm.
being such a firm foundation and a rock of refuge for me, really. Just keeping me focused and because like it was a temporary goal. It's only a couple months away, but a lot can happen in a couple months. And
Yeah,
just
for sure.
keeping my head on, yeah, keep my head on right and making sure I'm focused on the right things. Having my trainer around, who I was literally with these dudes every single day. My trainer and my brother, grinding it out through rehab sessions, through stretching, through workouts, through being out on the field doing runs and everything like that. Like so. And I just thank God for just being there throughout that entire time. And I got so close to him during it. And even nowadays I read scripture every day. I started reading scripture almost every day during 2022. I read it, like I said, almost every day in 2022 and 2023. I read it every day. And then 24 and 25, I've been reading it every day. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. And just like that time, not being in school anymore and, like every day, you're creating a process and a routine for yourself, getting up, starting your day with God and, afternoon when your workouts are over, finishing that with God, thanking him for that experience. And then when the night's over, just thanking him for your entire day. Um,
Yeah.
but then, and then there's that feeling of, when your entire work comes to the end of completion and, you got your entire family literally sitting around you, your mom who's, worked her entire life to put you in a situation like she did. And, um, just to hear your name be called out of, coming from a small town in Campbellsville, like, I had 250 kids in my school. I had 19 kids on my football team.
Yeah.
Um, like I say, and I always say, a single mom with 4 kids, people don't know how hard that is. I can't even fathom it myself. I get home from a
No.
long day of my own, and I'm
Yeah.
like, fuck. but,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, for that moment to happen and see my mom crying and the people that's played such a um, significant role in my life, you almost feel it more for them than you feel it for yourself.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, yeah, yeah, but there was every bit of love in that situation. I couldn't imagine it being any different from me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Shout out to Micah. That dude is I've only talked to him over DM, but
Yeah,
super professional. And that's awesome, like that you have your brother with you through your whole process, man. Like I have a
people
little
don't
brother.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah, dude, that bond, just being able to like be accountable for each other, have your
yeah,
each other's backs.
and
And
it's a
I mean
different way because
that's
you're flesh and blood. Like you're flesh.
yeah,
So when he's really giving you advice or giving you criticism, whatever, it's real. It's
yeah.
coming from the
You're
heart. So
exactly
yeah.
right. Yeah. And Brady, my little brother, he doesn't really hold back whenever he's telling me the truth. So, I mean, I'll always listen to him.
That's how we are
His
as we're brothers, though. We're gonna tell you the truth,
exactly. Yeah.
harshly, too.
100%. Yeah. So let's talk about your season with the Jets, your rookie year.
Yeah,
Um, so James 1 verses 2 through 4 talks about perseverance through trials.
yeah,
And so earlier in your career, there was a very specific moment where, a touchdown was taken away after celebrating early, and
question.
a moment that has followed you in the media, and I'm sure maybe bother you sometimes here and there.
Yeah.
Um, so how did that experience, what did that experience teach you, and what did God show you throughout that season, um, about, maybe criticism, limited opportunities, keeping hope through difficult times?
Yeah. Uh, so people think I've been asked, a million times about the dropping that ball in front of the end zone. How's it feel? How's it feel? And I'm like, well, if you want to be honest, it's like I took it with a grain of salt. Like even in the moment, you can ask my brother, you can ask my mom immediately after, teammates that were around me. Like you just see God and you see God working through you in moments like that. Like,
Yeah.
you scored tons of touchdowns in your career. Never one time in my life even fathom dropping the ball at the 1 yard line.
Hmm.
Um, so, for that to happen kind of in front of, it's Halloween night. We're in all black at MetLife Stadium in New York. Um, literally I get after the game and see, our Jets post alone has, 12.5 million views. Our ESPN has 20 million views. And as much as people want to say like, oh, that was such a bad moment, but I literally said after the game, I said, God took that moment and whether it had been for, you know, my ultimate glory or for me to be exalted in that moment, but he let the entire world know who his son was.
Yeah.
Whether for better or for worse, he let the entire world know that, this is a kid that um, you might not know him right now, but you know him later. And I feel about that. And when times come going forward, yeah, I can be like, yeah, I'm the kid that dropped the ball at the 1 yard line, and
Yeah.
everyone, turn their back against me and the entire Jets fan base crucifying me and
Hmm.
all of NFL football calling me a, idiot and tons of DMs, people telling you to off yourself, all types of things, people going crazy about parlays, like, like
Yeah.
literally all the, yeah, yeah, tons of things. But like I said, I take it with a grain of salt. Like
Yeah.
everyone's an individual, and everyone has their moments where they're like, you've seen someone on TV and you're like, what the, what the, whatever. And you say whatever, but just so happen these people just so happen to message me.
Yeah.
And, and if people judge me off the worst thing I've ever did, everyone will hate you, so
Yeah.
I don't, I took it with a grain of salt and understand that God was using it as an opportunity to maybe to just exalt me later down the road. And like I said, it's the testing of your faith. That entire year was the testing
Oh
of my
yeah.
faith, to feel like you're overly prepared for opportunity, but not to receive it. And like I said, that's just me. That's me feeling like I'm overly ready for opportunity, but maybe my grounds wasn't to be in New York. And people don't know this, but like, and I'll say this. I did not. Cleveland was not a place that I desired to go to. Like I was like, New York would be an awesome place to be in. You're in New York,
Hmm. Yeah.
and literally getting drafted there and seeing that it wasn't what it didn't cut out, what it all was cut out to be,
Yeah.
and me to be exalted in a place that I didn't necessarily want to be in at first, like Cleveland.
Hmm.
So I just see how God works things 180 for your life, and yeah, thank God.
Yeah. And it's so unfortunate how people are, how quick people are to be negative.
Oh yeah.
And you just gotta pray for him. I mean, that's an unreal way of how you handled it. I mean, you're a rookie having to deal with all that, man. Like I just feel for that. Like that's terrible.
Yeah.
And
But
obviously, like that way you handled it, the way you looked at it, like that's powerful.
hmm
Being able to like see, like, okay, yeah, my back's up against the wall, like, but yeah, I'm showing you who I am, who Jesus's son is right here.
of
Like
course.
I'm a child of God, and having that identity first instead of being like, yeah, I'm a football player, like I just messed up, and then let it bother you.
Yeah,
Like,
so
no,
be it.
I'm a child of God. Like
Yeah.
it's
And then
okay
I,
to
I
just
think
move
about
on.
like I think about the Lord saying like, what is to suffer or be punished for doing wrong? But it counts so much more to the Lord for when you suffer for doing what is good, what is doing right. You
Yes.
know, and like I said, I seen it all. I seen it all. It's just you know, just my faith being tested and just affirming that because I'm being faithful when I have like little to nothing as far as my playing career goes. When I am given that opportunity to be given everything that I could hope ever imagine for, I'll be 10 times greater for it.
Yeah, 100%. Um, and I mean the bashing, it kept coming because in 2025 you were waived, and
Yeah.
that's something that like players could definitely say that that's one of the hardest moments that you have to experience in professional sports. So, what was that like mentally and spiritually on you? And did you ever wrestle or doubt what God had in store for you or maybe your future?
So literally within like 2 weeks of training camp, I already kind of felt like the writing was on the wall and I was going to end up being somewhere else. Um, and you think that like in a time like that, people would, start running away from their faith and start going into their flesh and their worldliness and start doing everything against, what God wants from them. But
Yeah.
I just felt like in that opportunity of everything, kind of crumbling down, I felt like it was my time to like kind of double down on my faith. So like, I just felt and even like, being when I finally was cut and released, and I was making my decision because you get cut if you don't get claimed. Like a team could have claimed me and I could have been signed to the active roster. But even like the fact of me not being claimed by anybody, even 1 year, 1 year being drafted, 1 year after being drafted, you get cut, no one even claims you, and you're kind of just waiting for a call to be on someone's practice squad.
Yeah.
I got two calls, Cleveland and another team, and literally for 2 days, like I would because we had this field, and I'm big on grounding. I'm big on just connecting, just being connected to God, and being in His nature and in His essence. Whether it be at the beach or whether it be in the woods and in the forest. So I went into this. We had this big field, and I would just go out there barefoot and just walk around for you know you can ask my brother. I was out there sometimes like 3 hours straight. I'd just be out there just walking around and talking to God, just constant ceaseless action and ceaseless and being forever in my prayer with him. Just
Yeah.
give me direction, but just give me some wisdom and discernment in this next season of my life. I'm not going to be here where I thought everything would blossom from, but just because I know that He'll realign and recorrect my paths. I think about just being grafted back into His tree and His branches all the time, and I just told me, Lord, if I'm out of alignment with You, just pull me back in or just repurpose me wherever You will.
Yeah.
Um, and everything in my heart told me to go to Cleveland, literally. And literally down to the wire, these literally, I think like 1:30 or one something, you had to make your decision. And literally down to the wire, I'm just sitting there praying and praying and praying. My brother's with me. And he's on the phone with, executives and stuff like that, trying to let them know that I just need a couple more minutes to make my decision. And, I prayed it out and God told me to go to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I've never been more close to God than when I was making that decision. Yeah,
Hmm.
no doubt.
And that's cool how you mentioned doubling down with your faith.
Yeah,
I think when most Christians, or even most people, when we face a struggle, when we face a setback, or maybe questioning God, why, why am I going backwards? Why am I going this way? Why are you pulling me this way? It can easily be like, he doesn't have a plan for me.
yeah,
He doesn't have, I don't know if I could trust in his plan. Like what's the good that I'm going to get out of this? And
hmm
just doubling down on that, it's so hard to do. But I mean, doing that and really trusting and going all in on his plan, even when it doesn't look like what you have for your life, that's where true peace is found and true trust is found.
no doubt.
And I mean, it worked out. Look at where
Yeah,
you are now. So you're a true testament to that. And so anyone watching this, really just double down. That's awesome. And I completely agree. It's hard sometimes. You can easily just question and say, whatever, God, you don't have a
It's the
plan for
easy
me.
thing to do. It's the
Yeah.
easiest thing to do is to be like, it's always easy to go back to what you know. The devil that I
Yeah.
know is better than the devil that I don't. It's hard to do the righteous thing or the simple thing and just lean into what God's got for you because it's sometimes it can be uncomfortable at first. Like all change is uncomfortable at first, but like I say to myself and I've said to people around me, you got to give yourself grace when you're becoming a new person. You know,
Yeah.
like being someone that you've never been before is going to be uncomfortable. You're
Oh,
going to go through
100%.
you're gonna go through inconsistent like lows and slumps where you feel great and sometimes you feel low. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it's you know, God didn't promise you to be happy every single day, but He
Hmm.
promised a peace, an eternal peace that comes from Him. You
Yes.
know,
Exactly right. And this past year, you led all receivers in rushing yards in the whole entire
Mhm.
NFL. So congratulations to you. That's an awesome accomplishment. I mean,
Thank you.
that's like I said, true testament to trusting in God's plan and really doubling down in your faith. So how do you
Yeah.
view football now? Not just as a career, but as a platform that God entrusted you with. And how does that look like when you live out your day-to-day life, living out your faith in the locker room, even beyond, the football field?
Yeah. Um, I feel like everyone's given an opportunity, everyone's given a platform, and whether it be just to stir up your flock, which is your friends or your family. And people's scale is different. Everyone's not going to have a Michael Jackson scale where you're in a place where people are fainting at your feet. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
everyone doesn't have that scale. Some people just have their small community or their small ministry that they can give. And even if their ministry only reaches out to their friends, that's all that matters.
yeah,
Your goal is to just touch someone else and turn their heart. So, and I thank God all the time for the platform that I'm given. And just as I continue to grow in this, and I say it all the time, he who does good with little will be given many. So I think about just cherishing what I have right now, and in the small circumstances that I've given, like a lot of opportunities or a lot of things aren't seen. I've had and I never, you don't even like to talk about it because you don't want to sound boastful about it, but like just having a conversation with just one person, when no one's around, like that, that's part of your ministry too. That's part of what God's put on your heart too. It's not about just getting in front of a stage and talking to a large group of people. It's
yeah.
also about it's about the one as much as it is about the many. So,
Hmm.
um, and just as like I said, as my platform grows, I just want to continue to lean into God and let people understand. And there's plenty of people, and especially now, I feel like there's more players, college and NFL, that are just starting to profess their faith. Um, and I hope no one ever feels like this haughtiness or this ego about it, where it's like, oh, that person's not more righteous than me. Who cares?
Yeah,
Like
right.
ultimately, who cares? If we're all leaning into God and um, just we're all seeing each other as sons and brothers and sisters and,
Hmm.
and daughters, so we're just trying to lean into that and yeah, just as my platform grows, just continue to just preach the word of God and preach and continue to profess my faith.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So like even like I've had teammates literally in the locker room like, "Oh, why do you read your Bible at halftime?" Like not like they're not like just asking a simple question like, "Why do you read your Bible at halftime?" I just tell people like I say it all the time, especially at the end of the season. Like I say, your voice, your body, your soul, your spirit, it belongs to the Lord, and I feel like it's just um really in our innate nature to just give Him praise and just I feel like, especially in moments like playing in a game, where it's plays and it's moments and it's situations, you just always want to give God thanks every time you walk on the field, every time you hear the play call. I just
yeah,
try to lock in. I try to lock in and lean in that, and I'm not trying to, you know, um, he said don't be like the Gentiles, praying and picking the best spots in the synagogues and praying on the street corners. I don't want to be like that. And I think it's more of your intention of your heart. So
yeah,
whether I'm reading my Bible, in front of a ton of people or reading it just in my room by myself, I feel like it means none, and God sees it the same.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So, last question. What would you say to someone who feels overlooked, doubted, or behind in life? Someone who loves God but is starting to question his plan because their career or their path hasn't gone the way that they had imagined.
Yeah. Um, Especially about the running out of time part. Like scripture says that Jesus started his ministry at almost 30 years old,
Hmm.
so like like some of the greatest actresses we know, like I think about Denzel Washington starting his acting career at 40 years old. Like people start later in life. I think about, there's young kids who, become 4 and 5 star recruits as eighth graders who are just happen to be 6'3" eighth graders and have beards and stuff. And some kids are going to be the senior who's, going to be the underlooked kid, but ends up having a longer, prolonged career. and be better in the end. So I feel like where you are right now, you just lean into where you are, be where your feet
Yeah.
are. Um, you know, be be intentional enough and be deliberate enough to see where you are, and if things in your life, and everything's so individual. I feel like, especially in our world of social media, everyone's like trying to find a we live so much through other people that we don't live our own lives. We're
Yeah.
basically, we don't
100%.
understand. Yeah, we don't understand it, but we're literally vicariously living through people's experiences all the time. Like we
Mhm.
don't even know we don't even know what we really love, or we don't even know what we're really thinking, because so much other stuff is overstimulating us in that way. So I just say, just for you, where your situation is, understand that you're an individual and you don't have to be where anyone else is. And just to be where your feet are, and continue to be faithful, continue to practice your faith, whatever that looks like for you at the time. Like
Yeah.
if it's just you reading a quick devotion on your phone, whether it's you spending an hour in prayer, whether it's you spending an hour reading your word, whatever that looks like, lean into it and don't feel like because this person's there, yeah, you might want to dabble in what that person's doing or try something different for what they're doing, but don't do it simply because of they're doing it. Simply do it because I feel like this can enhance my life, or this can enhance my experience.
Yeah.
Like even I think that, and that's such a multifaceted thing, whether it be clothes or, especially like clothes and fashion, and, things that are like expressions of people. Like people really lean into other, like put on things because you feel like they feel comfortable to you. Put on things because you feel like they look nice to you.
Yeah.
Because what looks nice to someone's gonna look completely different. What my brother loves to wear is completely different than what I like to wear. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And we both can look nice in the same area, and you know what I mean. Like, just I feel like everyone just needs to be themselves and understand that you know God is experiencing Himself through us every single day in a million different ways, a billion different ways.
Oh yeah.
Um, and and I said, don't you dare for like one moment like minimize yourself for other people. Be
Yeah.
yourself, be the foolish
100%.
version. So, that's what I got.
Yeah. Malachi, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you want to do this with me. Um, and I hope you have a great next year too. I mean, you had an amazing season, so continue to do your
Yeah.
thing, bro. But I really appreciate you want to be on this with me.
Hey, I appreciate you, Cole. It was good talking to you. Hopefully
Yes,
next year we can
sir.
do the same thing again.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. Yeah, I'll talk to Elliot. Shout out to Elliot.
Shout out
Yeah,
Elliot for sure. Yeah.
yeah. But thank you all so much for watching. Come back next Sunday for the next episode.